Okay, so today we are doing a fun video of the month. We are doing another book tag video, which I'm really excited about. We're doing the Bookish Scenarios book tag, which was created by the booktuber Lindsay Hart's Books. So thank you, Lindsay Hart's Books, for coming up with this book tag. I also want to give a shout out to Murphy Napier, who really needs no reason for me to shout her out because she is a massive part of the reason that this channel even exists. But the reason I'm shouting her out this time is because I saw her do the book tag, and so that's why I'm doing it. So with this particular book tag, rather than there being straightforward questions, each question itself is formulated in a scenario sense. So let's get into it and see how we go. So scenario number 1, you have to get rid of all of your books and you can only keep one from each of these genres: contemporary, fantasy, non-fiction, and one other genre of your choosing. What books do you keep? Okay, so for the first one we have contemporary, and I know exactly which one it would be for contemporary. This book, Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer. There's just so many reasons why I would choose this one. There are also so many great contemporary books that I have read this month, let alone this year, that I could choose from. But the reason I'm picking this one is because I love Bridget Kemmerer's writing style. I also love that Bridget Kemmerer writes with a purpose to shine a glaring light onto a certain subject, and in this case it is grief and loss. So I would go with this book. It's amazing. If you haven't read this book, the premise of this book is that a daughter is going to her mother's graveyard to visit her, and she's written her mother a letter and leaves it by her tombstone. And a boy who is working at the cemetery, who's mowing the lawn, has to pick up all of the possessions around each gravestone and move them safely out the way before he can mow the lawn. And he comes across the letter, he reads it, and he relates to what she's saying, so he writes "me too" at the bottom of the letter. The girl starts off being a little infuriated about it, but ends up writing back to him, and they start writing to each other. And it's amazing just not only how much they can relate to each other, but how much they can assist each other through grief and loss. It is a really beautiful book, and so I just don't think I would ever want to part with this book. So it's a recent read of mine. I actually read it this month. But yeah, very quickly I would choose Letters to the Lost by Bridget Kemmerer for that genre. So the next genre is fantasy, and this should come as no surprise to anyone. I would go with the adult fantasy, Mistborn, the first book, The Final Empire. This is without a doubt my favourite book so far for 2020. The basic premise of this book is that it follows this girl on the cover, Vin, who ends up becoming a part of a crew, and it's this book, in particular book 1, it is set in a high fantasy world where the difference between high fantasy and low fantasy is that high fantasy is a world that is completely different to our own, where low fantasy is a world where fantasy happens, but it's happening within our own world. So this is its own made up world. And in this world, the bad guy won before the book begins. So this crew is trying to do everything they can to defeat the bad guy because he is an absolute tyrant. Brandon Sanderson is an amazing author, and there are hard magic systems in this book that are completely different to anything else that I've ever read. And this book revolutionized reading for me. So if you haven't seen my review for this book, I definitely recommend you check it out because I got very emotional, and I'm still very emotionally attached to this book. Might potentially even reread it in December. We'll see how we go. But this will be my fantasy choice, Mistborn, Book 1, The Final Empire. The next genre is non-fiction, and I don't have any non-fiction books in my bookshelf behind me. But I know which book I would want to hang on to if I still had it, and I wish that I did, and I'm going to try and track down another copy of it. It is an autobiography called Queen of the Court by Serena Williams. This is a book that explores Serena's life from the moment she was born. In case you don't know, Serena Williams is a world-famous tennis player who has won multiple Grand Slams and is breaking records every other year. But she grew up with a very tough lifestyle. She grew up in the Bronx in America, and she had to go through quite a lot of things to get to where she is today, and I just found this book really motivational. I don't have this book anymore. I don't know why, because I had it for the longest time, so I don't know how I've lost it, but I am looking to procure another copy. And yeah, if I was to pick a non-fiction book, which I don't read non-fiction these days, but if I was to pick one, it would be Queen of the Court by Serena Williams. So the final genre is one of your choosing, and I'm going to go with dystopian because I had never heard of dystopians prior to this year, but I have certainly fallen in love with them. There are many candidates that could take this spot, so I've just randomly ended up picking one, and the one that I ended up picking was Divergent by Veronica. I almost said Veronica there. Veronica Roth. So the premise of this book is that it follows Tris Pryor, the lady on the cover right there, and basically she is coming to a point where she's coming of age, and in this dystopian world and in this Veronica Ross universe of Divergent, when children come of age, they get to select a faction that they are going to go and live in, because in order to survive in this world, in order for this world to survive harmoniously in any case, the citizens of this world are split into all these different factions that prioritize with different things. This is such an amazing read, and the only little reveal I'm going to give you is that Tris is born into one faction. She ends up choosing to go into another faction where none of her family are there. She doesn't know anyone there, but it's just such an amazing idea. I love Harry Potter, and I'm almost surprised that I didn't choose to go with Harry Potter for fantasy, but I have to go with Mistborn because of what it's done for me. But if you've read Harry Potter, you know of the Sorting Hat and how the Sorting Hat chooses for the Hogwarts students what house they go into. What I love about Divergent is no one chooses who the children who have now come of age, the faction that they go into, the children choose it for themselves. And I love that idea, love this world, and yeah, so I would go with Divergent, and that's the end of question 1. On to question 2. You're at the bookstore and you hear a teenager telling their mum they don't like to read, but their mum insists they pick something. You walk over and recommend a book you think is great for people who aren't big on reading. What book is it? You know what? Prior to COVID-19, I was working in a store that, among other things, sold books, and I always worked in the book section. And one of the reasons why I love working in the book section of my store is because I always want people to come up to me and ask me for recommendations or ask for assistance, because I love turning people over to books. So as far as teenagers are concerned, it really depends on the age of the teenager. While I strongly believe that any person at any age should be able to read any age-rated book that they want to read, and some people disagree, some people agree, so yeah, that's down to everyone's own perspective. But for me, I would focus more on either middle grade or young adult, really depending upon, are they 13 or are they 17, so it really just does depend. If it is a 13-year-old, I would be recommending this book, The Heroes of Olympus, The Lost Hero, because for 2 reasons. One, I think the child would really enjoy this book. It is a lot of fun. It revolves around our protagonist, who I've forgotten his name, Jason, but there's also Piper and Leo, who follow him, who are children who end up finding out they are demigods. What that means is they have either a god or a goddess as a parent, and the other one is a human, so they are half god themselves. They go to this place called Camp Half-Blood, where they learn about who they are and who their god or goddess parent is, and then they go on this epic journey that involves mythology being pieced and passed throughout the books, Greek and Roman mythology. It is so much fun. For the parent, I think the reason they would love it is because despite the fact that it's a middle grade book, it is a chunker, so it will last the child quite a while, and it is interesting right from the beginning. For me, I think it actually took me like 12 to 14 pages to get into the book, but that's me and where I'm at. I think any 13-year-old that picked up this book, despite the fact that it is a massive chunker, the total amount of pages are, I'm just going to quickly get them in this version, are 553, so it is more than a tome. It's just so interesting from start to end, and I just don't see any child that would not enjoy this book. However, if the teenager is older, let's say they are 17, here's what I would recommend. Okay, I'm going to show two different books here because, excuse me, because with the first one I'm going to show, it may not suit every single 17-year-old. I'm not going to split with gender at all. I'm just going to say it may not suit every 17-year-old. So, but the first book that I would recommend to anyone that's around 17 years of age would be The Selection by Kiera Cass. This is a dystopian book that, the basic premise of this book is that, I don't remember how many, but a certain amount of girls are chosen to compete in a bachelor-style competition to win the heart of the prince of this dystopian world. There is so much that goes on in this book, though, and judging from the cover, it looks like I don't want to say this, but I'm just going to. Bear with me. I'm sure you'll understand what I mean when I say this. I don't wish to offend at all. I'm just going to say it. It looks like a girly girl cover, but allow me to dissuade everyone from looking at the cover and judging the proverbial book by its cover, or in this case the physical book by its cover, because there is a lot more that goes on in this book than one might expect or that meets the eye. We have a very strong female protagonist. We also have this rebellious group who's really trying to go at war against the castle, and that causes a ton of chaos. So there's a lot of fighting and things like that as well. A lot of conflict that goes on thanks to these rebels. So don't just judge the book by its cover. But if this is not something that a 17-year-old would want to read and they haven't read any book at all, then a safe bet, I believe, for any 17-year-old would be to start with Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone and work your way through the entire Harry Potter collection. If the parent wants to get a child onto reading, millions of children can't be wrong when they've gone from not wanting to read to being turned onto a series thanks to one amazing author, J.K. Rowling. So I would definitely recommend Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or if you're in America, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, because it is such an easy book to read. The writing style is really easy to read, and it is just so much fun. It is filled with magic and whimsy and wonder, but also the protagonist, Harry Potter, is such a relatable character to so many children that it's just so captivating, and so that's what I would recommend. On to question 3. You're not feeling yourself and need a pick-me-up. Which book do you read to put yourself in a great mood? I'm going to try and pick a book that I haven't picked so far, so here we go. Okay, I'm going to go with The Devil Wears Prada by Lauren Weisberger. This is a book that I only read recently. I only read it finished it a couple of days ago, and started reading it a couple of days ago too. I finished it really quickly. This book is just, it's a lot of fun. The premise of this book is that it follows our protagonist, Andrea Sachs, who ends up applying for and receiving a job. Her position is to be a personal assistant to the editor-in-chief of a fashion magazine, Runway, Miranda Priestley, who, the reason why this book is called The Devil Wears Prada is because Miranda is known as the Dragon Lady. She's the most devilish boss that you could ever work for, because she's always coming up with highly impossible or highly improbable tasks for her personal assistant to do. And one of the most fun things about this book, at least for me, and so, you know, it is a personal question of what would raise my spirits and make me happy. One of the most fun things for me about this book is continuing to read to see what other impossible task Miranda's going to come up with to get Andrea to do. So I would turn to The Devil Wears Prada for that one. On to question number 4. Yes, 4. Okay. You go back in time for a day to your teenage years. What book would you most likely have caught yourself reading? I can answer this one very quickly because it is behind me. The first book in the Vampire Academy series, Vampire Academy. This is a book that, this is a series that I began to read when I was a teenager. It's a teenager, right? Yes, in my teenage years, and I got a lot further in the series than I first thought I did. I came into my reread of this series this year thinking I'd only read 3 books, but I think I read the first 5, but not the 6th one. But yeah, I was definitely reading this in my teenage years, and it's been great to go back as an adult and read this again. So that's what you would find me reading, Vampire Academy, among many others, but certainly definitely this one. Question number 5. Your friend surprises you with a 4-day trip and you have 1 hour to pack. Which book do you bring to read on the way? Just one? Really? We're away for 4 days and you just want me to bring 1 book? Are you serious? I would probably have most of my suitcase filled with books rather than anything else. But if I could only pick one, I guess I would choose this book, The 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, and this was not an easy decision for me to make, and the biggest reason why I'm choosing this book is because it's a long one. In fact, it is 505 pages long, so I'm more trying to choose a long book because if I'm there for 4 days, a short book's just not going to cut it with me unless I'm happy to reread the book right away again after I've read it the first time. So it's rather improbable that I'm going to go away for 4 days and only pack 1 book. It's not going to happen. But if I would, this is a good one to take with me for many reasons. So the premise of this book is that it follows our protagonist, whose name is Aidan Bishop, who wakes up one day in a mansion having no idea who he is, how he came to get there. His memories have been completely wiped, and he is told that he needs to solve a murder in order to escape this mansion. He's also told that he is in a situation where he's in a time loop where the day will keep repeating itself until he solves the murder. And it was an amazing read. I enjoyed myself so much with this book. So yeah, I would enjoy reading this while I was away. Question 6 is, your house has been robbed. Don't worry, everyone is safe, but your bookshelf has been raided. No, don't raid my bookshelf. What's the book you really hope is safe? This is not fair. It's like choosing among my children. This is so not fair. It's funny. I mean, I don't have kids, and it's funny that this scenario would come up because if I was robbed, that would be my first thought. It wouldn't be wallet, phone, computer, anything like that. It'd be, oh my god, are my books okay? So, which book would I hope would still be there? Look, I know I'm repeating myself, but again, I would have to go with this one. Mistborn. Because it is my favourite book of the year, and because of what it did for me as far as reading is concerned, revolutionizing reading for me, I would want to make sure this book is okay. Now, here's a little update for you, for those of you who have been following my Mistborn journey. I am planning on actually replacing this version. There is in my opinion, I'm sorry, just don't listen, there is a better cover, so I plan on getting that and trying really hard to do so because the cover is American, so it's not going to be easy for me to track down, but I will climb metaphorical mountains to get the cover that I want. But in the meantime, I want this book to still be there. So that answers that question. Last question, question 7 is, your friend borrows a book and returns it in awful condition. Are we still friends? Do you A, just pretend you haven't noticed? Yeah, well, probably I would, but anyway, because that's just who I am. I'd probably let it go. B, ask them to repurchase it. I wish I had the gall to say, you can get me another copy because you've ruined my book. I wish, but I'm just not that sort of person. C, secretly do the same to something of theirs. No, that's, that's revenge, and I wouldn't do that. So I wish I could be the type of person that would say, you ruined my book, you're going to replace it. But in all honesty, I would be the one to ignore it and not even bring it up and just privately fume in my own home and replace it myself and go through the whole once bitten twice shy ordeal where I would never lend a book out again. But that's the thing, I very seldom lend out books anyway. I currently have a book that I have lent out to a friend, which is a very precious book to me. It is called My Dark Vanessa, and I know that this friend will take really good care of this book. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lent it out to this friend in the first place. But if I lent out a book, especially a book that I loved, if it was a book I didn't care about, then no big deal. But if it's a book that I loved and it came back ruined, I don't think I could lend out my books again because they mean so much to me. In saying that, if I read books and I don't enjoy them, if I DNF them or know that I'm not going to hang on to them, I will just give them away. So to anyone who wants to read them, because I've always said this and will always maintain it, I do believe in books being able to have a second life. So if I'm not going to enjoy it, someone else can, and what they end up doing with the book, I hope they treat it well. Books to good home, but if they don't, I wouldn't know about it because they wouldn't be returning it to me. But anyway, at the 22-minute mark, because I'm always trying to make these videos really short and they always go really long. That is the end of this book tag, which is, again, the Bookish Scenarios book tag created by booktuber Lindsay Hart's Books. Thank you so much, Lindsay Hart's Books, for creating this wonderful scenario book tag. I really appreciate that. And thank you also to Murphy Napier for doing a video on this book tag so that I could see it and know about its existence. Alright guys, so I'm going to leave that there. If you end up doing this scenario bookish books tag, is that what it's called? Bookish Scenarios book tag, then do comment below and let me know and I'll check out your video. So what did you think of this one? Do you agree with my choices or disagree? Sound off in the comments below. But until next time, I'm letting you guys go with peace, blessings, and so much love. I post videos every Thursday and Saturday with reviews and other videos like this one in between. I'll see you again very soon. Mwah. Thank you so much for watching and happy reading. Bye guys. Bye.